The world's apparent highest grossing animated movie, Ne Zha 2, is finally getting a Western English dub release, and surprise surprise, A24 are the ones actually taking it on. I mean, of course they are. They seem to be the best fit of the studios out there right now to take on that kind of release. A few years ago, I may not have necessarily said that, but in the past few years, we've seen this previously definitively indie studio spread its wings. Just last year, Civil War was its most expensive production to date, and now they're taking on the apparent highest grossing movie of all time. And I'm not kidding, this thing reportedly made $2.2 billion basically just from its domestic Chinese release. That's not too shy off of Avatar Titanic kind of money. In fact, if this international release can at least pass $43 million, it will beat Titanic and join the top 4 highest grossing movies of all time. Now, there are suggestions out there wondering about the legitimacy of that figure, but it's nonetheless fair to say that this movie has had a lot of hype around it, and the rest of the world have just been waiting to find out what all the fuss is about. What is a Ne Zha? Well, it looks like at least in the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, starting August 22nd, you'll actually get to find out. No mention of the UK there for the English dub. It's not like we invented the language or anything. Maybe we weren't seen as the needle pusher for that box office. The first Ne Zha was also a pretty big hit with a $720 million gross. But obviously, this is pretty modest compared to the sequel's $2.2 billion. There's a far bigger gap there than between the two Inside Out movies, the second movie having been the defending champion prior to this release, which suggests that a lot of the Chinese audience checked the first one out on streaming in the time between 1 and 2, I assume. And I say this with confidence because the first Ne Zha movie came out in 2019. We were certainly occupied for the next few years when it came to streaming. And when you do centralize to just China alone, you can certainly see how Ne Zha 1 would have gotten itself a bigger audience when this population of 1.4 billion people suddenly found themselves stuck in their homes for a year or two. But these crazy numbers also suggest to me that people who didn't see the first movie went and saw this one anyway, which is probably for the best in its international release, as maybe that means you don't have to have seen the first movie to actually follow this second one. Although, in saying that, the plot sounds very connected, and I did see the first movie. And from the sounds of it, here's spoilers for said first movie, connecting to the second one, Ne Zha's body is destroyed, and he only survives with his spirit. However, apparently not everything's so different from Hollywood because their bodies are regenerated at the start of the movie. That's handy. I'm sure it's all going to be explained, but it's still a pretty hard launch into this franchise. But anyway, in Ne Zha 2, the story continues in its mythical world where ancient gods, humans, and demons coexist. A new threat emerges from the deep sea, endangering both the human realm and the divine order. Ne Zha, now reborn with immense power and a rebellious spirit, is forced to confront this threat while grappling with questions about destiny, identity, and the responsibilities that come with great power. So it does seem to start with a new story/threat, but they're gonna have to make sure that everything is communicated well to the newbies, which is gonna be key in marketing this, as I'm pretty certain that most people in the English-speaking market have not seen the first movie. You're gonna have to convince people that they can go into this one blind, otherwise what's the point in giving this a release at all? I guess cinephiles could potentially appreciate this movie for its success, even if you have no idea what's going on, but that's not gonna spell any major future success. You know, there needs to be a kick to it. And at the very least, for an authentic Chinese production, the culture is inherent within its story. According to Cartoon Brew, this new installment continues the story of the fiery young demigod, blending Chinese mythology with contemporary action and sharp CG animation. So there's that, and you're also gonna need to have some authentically Chinese talent to go with it. Alas, the big names attached to the English dub version is Michelle Yeoh, who is at the height of powers right now. Of course, she is very much a golden egg for A24, having won Best Actress for arguably their most successful movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Again, with A24, it's not just that they produce indie movies, it's what movies they produce on an indie budget. But yes, Michelle Yeoh is attached, which immediately adds some legitimacy to this redub, although I hope some actual professional voice actors are thrown into this as well. Hey there, thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. Come subscribe if you haven't already for more animated movie news. We'll talk about A24 when they do animation stuff like this. Right, back to the second half. Her comments on the movie are also as classy as you'd expect. She said, "I'm honored to be part of Ne Zha 2, a landmark in Chinese animation and a powerful reminder of how universal our stories can be. Sharing this with audiences in English is such a joy, and I can't wait for everyone to experience the wonder, heart, and artistry of this film on the big screen." Another reason why having authentic Chinese talent involved in this makes a difference, even for an English dub. Generally, it's not as important with redubs, but considering how tied to Chinese culture this is, I think it really does matter. As much as I do love that one of the characters is just the voice of Eggman. Mike Pollock was getting his paycheck for the first movie, and for me personally, that made me enjoy it. Even if perhaps it's not quite as authentic, it was a redub from a time that was less focused on it. They didn't know what gold they had just yet. Now, A24 will be collaborating, of course, with the original Chinese studio, CMC Pictures. And this isn't the first time that A24 has gotten involved in an animated release, despite not really being typically known for it. But as soon as I say one of them is Marcel the Shell with shoes on, maybe that suddenly makes more sense. Yup, that's their biggest prior example up to this point. That little damn shell even getting an Oscar animation for Best Animated Feature. And launched its director's career into the Lilo and Stitch remake, oh boy. But that's not all, as they've also produced The Legend of Ochi? No, me neither. Apparently it just came out. This was a live-action animated hybrid featuring Finn Wolfhard and Willem Dafoe. Had no idea it existed, but apparently that happened too. And that's it. So really, a dub of a $2.2 billion movie is a bit of a jump from a stop-motion shell movie. But at the end of the day, I guess the movie's already been made alongside a huge profit, so it's not going to entail as much work on their part as usual. They're riding a wave here, really. Regardless of whether it'll be an overall Western success or not, I think there is a lot of genuine interest to see what has become the biggest animated movie success of all time. Like, what has this movie got that propelled it to that level? It's not like this is the only animated movie China's ever made, so like, what got it to that level? Obviously, you have something rooted in Chinese mythology, coming out at a time where China wants to push more domestic releases. However, there must be something in the movie itself that made them go, yeah, this is the one that everyone will want to see again and again. In the wake of other international successes like Flow and its 2 Oscar nominations, as well as the South Korean-produced King of Kings also doing brilliantly around Easter, it is great that we're getting a more international conversation going on the animation scene. Until now, it's only really been Japan that's broken in as a serious non-English speaking voice in animation in the US. And to be fair, they particularly have a lot to offer. But now that we have this year, with movies from China, Latvia, and of course Robot Dreams last year, which was a Spanish-French co-production, this is a weirdly exciting period internationally, as the American animation industry seems to be going IP crazy over originality. And speaking of which, let's not forget that DreamWorks is just outsourced central now. So in a cynical way, those will probably be all internationally produced as well. There is legitimately a Chinese offshoot of DreamWorks already, great at posting controversial propaganda. And Illumination has basically been French from the start. And on the flip of that, we now have this Chinese production collaborating with the most original American studio out there in A24. It's great to see at least some form of international collaboration these days. The animated version of the planet has learned to get along with itself anyway. Even some of the original Hollywood animation coming out has an international influence to them, with K-pop Demon Hunters being the obvious example. I just hope that moves like these can see the continuing diversification of the animation scene and be just one small part in keeping an international dialogue. But maybe that's too deep of a cut for what is, in essence, some people speaking English over a Chinese movie, primarily because it made a lot of money. But on that note, I shall end things off there. My name's been Daz, thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell me your thoughts, are you gonna watch Ne Zha 2? Is it just people that are crazy about animation and cinema that are interested? I'd love to hear what my audience particularly thinks. Will you just wait for my review at the end of August? I guess we'll find out either way. But on that note, I shall see you all in a little bit. Cheerio!